We'll call to order the City Commission meeting of Monday, November 7th, 2016. Let the roll show that all commissioners are present. And at this time, the order of business, are there any changes, Mr. Kessel or anyone?
No, there are not.
All right. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the order of business.
So moved.
A motion to approve
Second.
and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The consent agenda. Is there anything on the consent agenda that the commissioners would like to discuss?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
We have a motion to approve the consent agenda
Second?
and a second. Any further discussion on consent agenda? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we'll move on. We have no timetable agenda tonight, nothing at 5 o'clock, so we just have non-timetable agenda items. And the first item is check signer. Attorney Kripe.
Mr. President, members of the commission, now that we have Deputy City Administrator Carlson with us, there are occasions where it can be difficult to get there's only three people authorized on the resolution right now. Now that we have the Deputy City Administrator position filled, it's appropriate to add Ms. Carlson to that authority to sign at the banks where the city holds accounts. In the past, we've had only 3 names on the resolution. In this particular resolution, we asked for 4 because we have encountered some difficulty where if people are out at the same time, they do need 2 signatures. And so you can understand with 3 people, sometimes getting 2 can be challenging in a timely manner. And so we're recommending the names on the resolution as the authorized signers. And it would be resolution number 36-2016. And the names would be President Decker, and then City Administrator Kessel, Deputy City Administrator Carlson, and then Engineer Craig Kupis.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kripe. Is there any discussion on this resolution? And you said it was 36-2016, correct?
That's correct, sir.
Any discussion on this resolution?
Mr. President, I move to approve 36-2016.
We have a motion to approve 36-2016
Second.
and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. LaFour?
Aye.
Ms. Jennings?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Next up, Ms. Kripe, is the wastewater backup claims ordinance.
Mr. President, members of the commission, pursuant to your conversations during the workshopping and to the fee schedule which was approved at the previous meeting, removing that wastewater backup fee, this ordinance would revise the code to remove the references to the wastewater backup fund, which is available to the citizens currently. Without that fee, the fund would not be self-sustaining at this point. And it would be ordinance number 1623.
All right, thank you, Ms. Kripe. Is there any discussion amongst the commission here on ordinance 1623? And this is the first reading, so we will have a public hearing. Okay.
Yep, that's correct, sir.
Okay. Is there any discussion among commissioners? Any? If not, I would open up the public hearing on 1623. If you have any concerns about the wastewater backup claims ordinance and or any concerns about it, please come to the podium, state your name, and address the commission. Seeing no one from the public, I'll close the public hearing. Is there any further discussion by commissioners on this ordinance? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion, either approve or deny.
Move to approve ordinance number 1623.
We have a motion to approve
Second?
and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Ms. Jennings?
Aye.
Mr. LaFour?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
No.
Chair votes aye. Moving on, we're going to reports, and Mr. Kessel, are you going to start this? I know that Assessor Hirschfeld's on there, or are you going to?
Assessor Hirschfeld will start us off with
Okay.
the abatement request.
Good evening, Mr. President and Commission. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you tonight. We did have presented to us an application for abatement from Menards for both the 2014 and 2015 year. But I did want to give a rundown of the different protests or hearings that the city and my staff perform. We have informal protester hearings, and that starts with the local level here where they can come to my office. We review their parcel information. If there's any errors, we'll correct for those errors and try and explain how we come to their valuation. At that time, if they're not happy with what we have to speak to them, they can take that on to the City Board of Equalization, which is held generally in early April. From there, they can go on to the County Board of Equalization in June, and if they still haven't received satisfaction, they can go to the State Board of Equalization in August. There's also the formal protest, which is an abatement, and that's what Menards has filed. That abatement is filed at the county, but is first heard here before yourselves, and you then give a recommendation to the County Board of Equalization, who will then make their own judgment. At that time, if the applicant's not happy with what they received, then that can go to district court. And again, like I said, we did have Menards filed 2 abatements, and with the new staff that we have, the new president, and the changing market dynamics, I'd like to take an opportunity to sit down with all of you, kind of a little workshop session. I'll let you know how we arrive at our values, get a little feedback from you, how we want to handle some of these issues going forward, and do that ahead of the abatement hearing. Now, typically we can handle the abatement hearing on a regular Monday night meeting, and we do have one on December 19th that would work well if that works for all of you. And then it would just be to set the workshop date. So, I'll give you a moment.
Did Menards provide you any numbers yet? What their numbers indicate where they think they should be?
They did, yes.
Okay. And supporting documents and so on?
They did provide some paperwork,
Okay.
yes.
You, you will be sending those to us so we can take a look at those
Absolutely,
as
yes,
soon as you can?
correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Hirschfeld, I like that idea. I would like to sit down and have this training, or how did you refer it?
As a workshop,
Workshop. What were you considering for the dates?
I know Mr. Kessel put down the 12th here of December.
Okay.
Other than a short period at the end of this month and early December, my calendar's pretty well wide open for you.
And this would be at what time?
At your convenience. I mean, I'll make sure I'm there for whatever works for the commission.
Okay, thank you.
Other commissioners, you have any input on date? Would the 12th work, or is there a better date?
What day of the week is that?
It is a Monday.
Monday.
It is in between. We have a normal meeting on the 5th and the 19th. Right now, I don't know if we are going to have our second with the liquor license ordinance, if that was the plan for the 12th, or was that, or were we going to skip in December? I guess we'll see how this first one goes.
Yeah, Commissioner Decker, or President Decker, the thought process is if we have our first meeting with the liquor license ordinances on the 14th, we'll have our city commission meeting the 21st. We may have a second liquor license hearing on the 28th, our regular commission meeting on the 5th, this abatement hearing on the 12th.
Now, this isn't a hearing, right? It's just a workshop.
Nope, this is just a workshop. The liquor license is,
Okay.
I was referring to, I think.
Okay.
And Mr. Hirschfeld and I will work together to see how long that workshop will last. We may be able to host a liquor workshop as well on the same day as the 12th. I'm guessing that we'll have about a 40-minute presentation or so, but we'll work out those details.
Okay.
And if you're willing to do a 2-hour meeting on that day, we could incorporate a third, if needed, liquor license workshop as well. All of the meetings we're planning for is at 4:30, just to be consistent for you.
Okay.
I guess I would leave it up to the commission. I'm open for any dates, so
Yeah.
I would leave it up to the commissioners to decide. The 12th works for me.
Yeah, that would work.
I understand we'll have a fourth, or a different fifth commissioner by that time, but we'll certainly invite them as soon as possible.
Ms. Jennings, is 12th work?
That's perfect.
Mr. Steiner? Okay.
That'll work.
And then I think Mr. Altman said he was okay with
Yep,
it,
that'll
so, and I'm
fine.
okay, so we'll just have to invite the new commissioner.
Yes, we'll make
Okay.
sure we take care of that, and you'll all get a meeting invitation as well.
Okay, thank you.
And I must notice give notice to the Menards applicant as far as the meeting date. Is there any reason why the 19th won't work for a hearing night?
That's an existing commission meeting.
Right,
Yeah.
that should be okay.
fine.
That should be, that should be fine. We
Very
can
good.
incorporate that.
All right, thank you, Mr. President, Commission.
Okay, now we'll have Mr. Kessel.
Thank you, President Decker, and this is a nice segue into the next request, which is to change our January meetings. Right now, we're scheduled to meet on Tuesday, January 3rd, and January 16th, which is a Monday. We're meeting on the 3rd because the 1st would be New Year's, and based on the city's HR calendar, or HR policies, we would be closed on the 2nd and recognize New Year's Day on the 2nd. So because of all of the vacations we're expecting and other issues that the commission may have regarding travel, we're requesting that we change those 2 dates from the 3rd and 16th to January 9th and 23rd. It still falls in nicely with every other week since there are 5 Mondays in January, and we just feel that would be a better flow, and we'd have more attendance by making that change.
Commissioners,
Sounds
are you
fine.
okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Altman, Ms. Jennings?
Works for me.
Mr. Steiner?
Yep.
Okay. I'm okay with it also, so we'll switch the dates.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. The next item is a sales tax. We had another discussion at the city retreat that we held regarding the budget. And one of the items that came up in that budget retreat was the sales tax cap, removing it. Right now, we have a $35 cap per transaction on any sales tax collections that are made regarding our local tax. By removing that cap, it would increase sales tax collections for larger purchases in the community. I know that there's maybe concern expressed by those people, ag implement dealers and things, but they do not charge sales tax. They charge use tax, which will not be affected by this transaction cap. So what it would do is serve to provide additional collections without an increase in the actual 1.5% sales tax that we currently collect. This is for report only, and to let you know that we anticipate that at the next City Commission meeting, we'll have an ordinance available for you so that you can look at and hopefully move forward with the approval process. And I would refer to Attorney Kripe for any other details that I may have missed.
I think you covered it well.
Okay.
Okay. Any discussion by commissioners on this item?
Nope.
Okay, Mr. Kessel, next item 4.
The next item is the Start Development Agreement. We have currently are on our last year of a 5-year agreement with Start Development, and what we've produced for them is a 4-year agreement. The draft document has been provided to Galen Baker, who is the Executive Vice President, I think is his title, at the Start Development Corporation. They have reviewed that document briefly and only, I believe, with the president of the organization and not with the full board yet. So there are some changes. Sorry, I thought we had a slide for the, Aaron, is there we go. This slide shows you some of the changes from the existing document. As I mentioned, it goes from a 5-year term to a 4-year term. It also changes the revenue sharing. Right now, they're receiving $750,000 in 2016. And as you can see, this proposes a decrease in those amounts for the next 4 years. That is, of course, due to the sales tax collections are down rather significantly from when we first entered into this agreement 5 years ago. The other addition includes language with regard to the Small Business Development Center. And this has not been in the document previously, but the Stark Development Corporation has supported the Small Business Development Center in the past. They've actually supported them with the use of funds to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it would be our intention to only continue that partnership, not necessarily for Stark Development to meet all of their local match. That's not the intention of the language. It's simply to have the two entities work for common goals because they both are interested in new job development. And then convening a joint meeting between the Stark Development Board and the City Commission, preferably around June, prior to our engagement in the new budget process for the following year, so that we can make sure that we understand where they're going, what their goals are, and make sure that we mesh in terms of our long-term strategic outlook. And then there is a clause that would terminate the contract if we have a 5% revenue drop throughout the year. This clause was actually in the current contract, but it was at 10%. So this drops that revenue to 5% instead of 10%. So that would be my report. I do know that Mr. Baker is in the audience. I'm not sure if he has any comments he'd like to make, but I would certainly turn the floor over to him if he would like. Or not.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the commission, others. Pardon my failing eyesight. I did submit some different language for that one item regarding the Small Business Development Center that I would like to suggest. Because we deal with not only them, but a number of other organizations that contribute to jobs development and economic development in the area, and I didn't want to specifically just target the one. And you know, our history with the Small Business Development Center is that they have come and gone. You know, I mean, they had a person here in 1995 when I first came. For a number of years, that person served the area, and then the program kind of vaporized for a while, went away. It is it's a federal government program. It's a SBA program. So under the Small Business Administration, it is one of their many programs. Since they have come and gone a couple of times, and we've given a lot of money to help support them, but it's kind of scary to identify them individually in that we don't know if they'll be here under the next presidential administration or not. And so, I put some more general language into Sean's hand that we'd like to see changed, and I don't have a copy in front of me, so I don't know exactly how it reads, because I gave him my copy. We would like to see just that one change, in that, you know, there are the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the Department of Commerce, there are a number of others that we work with, and we would like to work with those as well instead of singling out the one.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Baker.
I can read you the language. Mr. Baker did provide this to me as I walked into the meeting this evening, and what it says currently is partner with the local business and Small Business Development Center within the city to promote job creation. The suggestion is to work with local businesses, other organizations, and/or government-supported program managers serving the city to promote job creation. So, as he said, just simply removes Small Business Development Center and makes it a little bit more general.
Is there previously a contract between the Stark Development Center and the small business?
No, never had.
So in previous years, when Stark Development was supporting the Small Business Development Center, what kind of contract was drawn up then?
There was never a contract.
Did they
what was
just
done
apply
is
for the
they
monies?
would come. They needed local match money, so they came to us and asked for a contribution. and we always gave one in the years they asked. Sometimes they skipped a year, we don't know why. They evidently had some other source during those years.
Do we have an idea where the Small Business Development Center is at today? I know, like I said, they were a Strom Center and they dissolved.
I can answer that.
The building dissolved, I should say.
Well, the building's still there, it's serving a great purpose. What happened was, when the Small Business Development Center's internal operating didn't quite work out.
Challenge.
We did work with the state director to make sure that those services did not go away. So right now we are having Small Business Development Center staff from Bowman primarily and from Bismarck come in and provide services to the clients they have here, and that is working well, and they're doing that right in the Chamber of Commerce building where we are. And so that's working pretty well, but you know, it would be much better if we had somebody right here in town. And in fact, the Dickinson State University has now signed an agreement with the Small Business Development Center, which is based in Grand Forks at the university, and they intend to hire a person that should be on staff January 1 in Dickinson. Well, maybe January 3. What did you say? 3, yeah.
Okay, so would you be in agreement then if we delete them, the Small Business Development Center, from that wording, that you would assume that if they come here asking us for monies, we're going to direct them
Usually send
to
them to
start
us.
development?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah, we've been working with them all these years. We
Right.
worked with them on the new arrangement for the temporary.
Which is what we want.
Yeah.
But I don't want them coming here and creating a situation where, you know, we have an agreement with Stark Development
I
Contract.
totally understand.
Okay, very good. You know you are being recorded.
Of course. Of course.
All right, thanks, Gil.
These days, I think we're all being recorded all the time.
There we are. So, Mr. Kessel, would that change then go into Part D on page 2? Is that,
Yeah, we would just simply substitute the existing language with this language, and that's the location part, I think it's 3, D,
right,
yeah.
okay.
With the further understanding that, as Commissioner Steiner has mentioned, you are our economic development agency, and we fund you.
We expect that, yeah. We expect that's the way it should work and has worked in the past.
Could you read that wording again, please?
Sure. The current wording you all have at your leisure there, the submitted language is to work with local business, comma, other organizations and/or government-supported program managers serving the city to promote job creation.
Okay.
And we can probably wordsmith that a little bit, but I think the intent is what's more important, most important tonight.
Commission okay with
Yep.
changing the wording? Okay. All right, thank you, Mr.
All right,
Baker.
thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda then is another agreement. This one is with the Convention and Visitors Bureau, oftentimes called the CVB. We also have proposed changes in this agreement. Terry Thiel, who is their executive director, also has a draft copy of the agreement and has brought that to their board. She and I are planning a conversation a little later this week as she is out of town. But we've gone back and forth several times to come up to the point where we are. This change is a little bit more dramatic than that of Stark Development. What we're proposing is a change from a 5-year agreement to a 2-year agreement. The main reason behind that is the revenue stream, which is primarily the occupancy tax that supports this agreement, actually went down more dramatically than our sales tax. We received about a 50% reduction in our occupancy tax just year over year. So we're in a much different position than we were 5 years ago. The other change, so we're taking in about, or expecting to take in about $250,000 in occupancy tax revenue in 2017. You can see the revenue sharing there is at $370,000. So the plan is to deficit spend or use our our reserve fund at $50,000 a year to reach the 370, and then supplement that with hospitality tax dollars. So we'll actually be using three sources of funding to come up with 370. The first two are taxation, and the second is existing funds that we've simply held in abeyance until this time. There's also the opportunity, if revenue exceeds 8% of our expected revenue, that they'll get an additional $25,000 payment in the fourth quarter of each year of the agreement. So there would have to be an 8% increase year over year to trigger that $25,000 bonus payment, and that would have to happen again in the second year for a second bonus payment. There is a line in that agreement that requests that the CVB diversify their revenue streams. Right now, their reliance on sales and occupancy and hospitality tax revenue, that makes up about 99% of their total revenue sources. Something that is not on this screen is that they operate out of a building that the City of Dickinson owns, and we also do cover the public utility expenses related to those costs. So the 370 is not our only expense or investment, I should say, into the CVB. The other change we made is that the city will fund the downtown music festivals. Currently, they're using the event grant to fund those downtown music festivals to the tune of about $20,000 a year. The event grant is meant to augment and perpetuate stays at our local hotels and motels. And so that event, although is a wonderful success, it doesn't necessarily generate a lot of hotel or motel stays within the City of Dickinson. So the city is going to take on that funding separate and distinct of the CVB so that they can focus those event grant dollars on those items like conventions that do bring in hotel and motel stays during that 2-year period. And then it has the same clause with regard to a 5% revenue reduction does terminate the contract. We also had the 10% in the original agreement with the CVB. So I believe that changes or signifies all of the major changes in that agreement. And as I said, Ms. Thiel is out of town and wasn't able to be here this evening. Are there any comments or questions with regard to that agreement?
Thank you, Mr. Kessel. Any comments, questions for Mr. Kessel by the commission? Hearing none, Mr. Kessel.
Okay, thank you. The others are just two thank you notes that we received. One of them was from the Belfield Theater, and the other one was from Badlands Ministries. These are in reference to the Southwest grants that we do provide to entities in the Southwest area. And the third and final, or excuse me, the last report that I have is the third quarter safety report. Again, Fire Chief Sivak is our safety officer, and he prepares this report for you, and I'll just read over it this evening. We've had 15 employee incidents. 8 of those have required medical attention, and 5 did not. 2 incidences were reported damage to actual city property. So our total incidences for the year is 42. Incidences that required medical attention is currently equal to our 5-year average, and all injuries requiring medical attention have been and will continue to be reviewed at leadership and/or executive team meetings. When we review these incident reports, we offer suggestions for trying to eliminate those incidences in the future. Maybe there's a change in operating procedures, maybe there's a piece of equipment that could be enhanced to avoid future injuries. Those are the types of things that we would go over at leadership and executive team. We have adopted the North Dakota Workforce Safety and Insurance Safety Management Program and the Safety Actions Menu and Drug-Free Workplace programs, and we do get audited annually, or could get audited annually with regard to those programs. We do get a fairly significant discount in our rates if they find us in compliance. And so that's why Mr. Sivak, or Chief Sivak, has done a nice job with this program, and we do continue to get discounts and have for several years. So Unless you have questions about either of those last two items, that concludes my report for this evening.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kessel. Any questions from commissioners for Mr. Kessel? Hearing none, we'll move on to the fire department, public safety, third quarter report.
Good evening, President Decker and Commissioners. In the third quarter for the Dickinson Fire Department, we tallied 118 responses to incidents, which you'll see on the next slide. There we go. Right now, we're in line to end the year at approximately 2013 levels for incident response. On the next slide, you'll see a graph that breaks down those incident responses. Well, I'm sorry, that's coming later. This one is on training. In the third quarter, we had 44 firefighters participate in trainings for a total of 1,013 hours. That's full-time and volunteer staff combined. That's a tremendous commitment on the part of our firefighters and what they give to us for training. The pie graph shows the different areas of training. Full-time personnel have certain areas required by ISO in company level training and in facility level training that they have to complete. Essentials training is our certification program. The probation training is what all of our new firefighters go through. Special operations, we'll get into some of that in the next slide, is hazardous materials response and technical rescue type of training. And then, of course, our regular monthly trainings are basic firefighting skills and technical rescue skills and hazardous material skills, just depending on the time of year. And here's that special trainings in the third quarter. We had an ethanol training specific to the ethanol fires at the Public Safety Center, which we call Station 2, July 14th. July 13th and July 18th, we hosted live fire training with the Dakota Prairie Refinery, and we just finished another training session like that today, and I think we're developing quite a partnership and a relationship with them in the resources that our facility provides, and we're going to continue to foster that relationship, of course. August 18th, the North Dakota Firefighters Association Regional Program Ethanol Safety Presentation. That was at the Central Fire Station. August 24 and 26, 24 hours of training, crewed by rail. This is a CERTC course. We had firefighters attend that in Pueblo, Colorado. August 31st and September 3rd, trench rescue technician training in Bismarck. 31st to the September 3rd, we had 4 people attend that. September 9th, International Association of Arson Investigators Conference in Minot. 3 of our people attended that. September 14th, we participated in the One Text or One Call Could Wreck It All campaign with a mock crash at the Dickinson High School. That went over, it was a multi-agency presentation. It went over very well, and hopefully the message has been taken by everybody that texting behind the wheel just simply is not the thing to do. Third quarter fire prevention and public education. We had a total of 660 activities in fire prevention and public education. That compares with a year-to-date total of 1,690 activities. That includes our tours and our special lectures and demonstrations, in addition to our inspections and our construction inspections and plan reviews. Public events for the third quarter, on the next slide, included a little bit of everything, from fire station tours for area civic groups in the community, fire safety lectures for area child care providers and area businesses, a hazardous materials awareness lecture and presentation for the Bureau of Land Management, provided by one of our hazardous material technician level people, Fire Inspector Todd O'Donnell. Extinguisher demonstrations for certain area businesses, and again, we have a partnership with Dickinson State University in training their residential and college staff. July 1st, we celebrated the 125th birthday of the Dickinson Fire Department. July 1st of 1891 is when we were officially recognized as an organized department by the state of North Dakota. You've all heard that before, I know, but there it is again. July 4th, we took part in we hosted the pancake breakfast at the Sunset Senior Center. And we were present at the Family Fun Day at Dickinson State University. July 4th, of course, we took part in the parade, and we had standby units available for the fireworks demonstration. On the 30th, we were a part of the Verizon backpack giveaway, and we're pleased and proud to be a part of that very, very worthy cause. August 3 to 5, Battle of the Badges blood drive, where this year we finally lost to the Dickinson Police Department. I still think, and this is kind of a reach on my part, but the fact that they had certain roadblocks in certain locations for people, just saying, it could have impacted the response for us as well. August 18th, the Fill the Boot for the Muscular Dystrophy Association campaign, something that fire departments nationwide have always taken part in. We had trucks and personnel at the West Family Fair, Walmart, Prairie Hills Mall, and we appreciate those locations allowing us to do that every year at those locations. September 30th, Career Day, Heart River Elementary School. We had staff present there also. And that concludes the third quarter activity report.
Thank you, Chief Seebach. Any questions for the chief from the commission? I just have, I guess, one question. We opened up the recruiting for the volunteers to 18-year-olds, did we not?
We did.
Okay. Have we done any kind of recruitment or any kind of campaign?
We haven't at this time. We're in the processes of actually building that, and
Okay.
The resources available to us, especially through the National Volunteer Fire Council, indicate that this time of year is one of the least productive times to do that. So we're looking at planning some type of event, recruitment fair, if you want to call it that, for the spring.
Okay.
So-
Well, and I was thinking also with your partnership with Dickinson State, great opportunity there. I know in the spring they start running their job fairs.
Yes, yeah, that would be. Very good.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Next report will come from the Police Department. Chief Dossinger.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the Commission. I'm here tonight to present the third quarter report for 2016. As you can see, we ended up, during the third quarter, we responded to 6,506 calls for service for the third quarter. Ending in September 30th, we had 19,503 calls for service at the end of the year. Our third quarter numbers for 2016 were slightly higher than the second quarter, but lower than the first quarter numbers. Traffic stops, we ended the third quarter with 1,432 traffic stops for a total of 4,515 traffic stops at the end of the third quarter. Our third quarter traffic stops were slightly higher than those in the second quarter, but a lot less than those in the first quarter. A lot of that has to do with our manpower and our staffing for the majority of the third quarter. Continuing into our fourth quarter, we are 3 officers down right now. So some of our proactive traffic enforcement numbers are down. As you can see, traffic enforcement for the third quarter issued 671 warnings and 654 citations, fairly consistent with those numbers for the second quarter, but a lot lower than those numbers for the first quarter. There have been a total of 252 traffic accidents reported during the third quarter. 5 of those traffic accidents were DUI related. As you can see, 168 of those accidents were property related, 66 were hit and runs, 17 of those were injury related, involved injuries, and we did have 1 pedestrian accident during the third quarter. We conducted 30 truck regulatory stops for the third quarter. We collected a little over $27,000 in fines and overweights. You can see that there is a reduction in the number of truck regulatory stops we made in the third quarter from that of the first quarter. Part of that is due to the permitting process that's in place. A lot of the trucking companies are following the rules, so to speak. The implementation of the bypass is being used more. and our truck regulatory officer has been taken off of his role as enforcing truck regulations and is oftentimes filling in as a shift officer, responding to those day-to-day calls.
Chief, of the 30 truck stops, how many involve citations?
I would say about 75%. I don't have those exact numbers, but most of those involved could be speed-related or actual overweights. Majority of those are overweights. Arrest numbers for the third quarter, kind of comparing that to the numbers of 2015. We're slightly lower than our numbers for 2015. We have 385 arrests in 2015 versus 307 for the third quarter for 2016. Our criminal investigative unit, basically we have 5 investigators. That's including the supervisor. They worked a total of 129 cases during the third quarter. Were called in 11 times and conducted 22 background checks. 2 of those were pre-employment polygraph checks were also conducted for police department staff. Right now, during the third quarter, they had 58 open cases that they spread amongst 5 investigators. During the third quarter, there were 59 registered sex offenders living in the city of Dickinson. That is also being monitored by our criminal investigative unit. Our tactical team callouts, we're sitting for a total of 7 at the end of the third quarter. We had 0 during the second quarter and 4 tactical team callouts during the third quarter. Fairly consistent with the numbers that we see in 2015. Usually you end the year right around that 10 to 12 number, so we're kind of on pace for that. Drug Task Force, as you know, we have 1 officer of the Dickinson Police Department assigned to the Drug Task Force. They currently worked 41 different cases during the third quarter. They seized 30 grams of methamphetamine and either bought or seized 15 grams of heroin during the third quarter. 47 officers attended 18 different trainings during the third quarter. As you realize, we don't have 47 officers, but 47 different officers, I should speak, attended those 18 different trainings. 4 of those occurred in July, 18 of those in August, and 25 of those in September. Looks like that slide got ran over. Are there any questions?
Does anyone have any questions for Chief Dossinger?
President Decker, I do have one.
Okay.
Chief, based on one of your earlier slides, you mentioned that you have over 6,000 calls for service in the quarter, which breaks down to about over 72 calls per day that dispatch is sending someone out.
That's correct.
You also dispatch for outside of the city of Dickinson. Are those numbers included in those?
Those are not. These are numbers that the city of Dickinson responds to, that the Dickinson Police Department responds to. Doesn't include Stark County Sheriff's Department, Fire Department related calls.
Okay.
These are calls that our officers respond to.
So over 72 times a day, you're getting calls to go out and help someone in the community.
That's correct. And usually that's done with between 5 officers.
Thank you.
Chief, how are you dealing with being 3 officers down?
Well, obviously we have to respond to calls for service when it requires to be responded to. We are working, our officers, they are putting in overtime to do that, adjusting shifts when possible. But our activity level is still there. We are still getting called in for serious crimes, and definitely have to pay overtime to do this. When the phone rings, we have to respond.
Do we have those positions listed?
Yes, we do.
Okay. How's the hiring process going for that?
It has been slow.
Okay. Thank you.
Chief, you and I had a conversation earlier today related to the last question. What are some of the other agencies dealing with in North Dakota when it comes to staffing?
It's similar trends what they're seeing. I think all the agencies in southwestern North Dakota are looking for staff. Right now we're living in a time frame where there's not a lot of individuals want to be a police officer. There's not a lot of individuals that want to work shift work, deal with the stress of being a police officer, and especially the negative criticism that's out there in the media. Being a police officer is usually a thankless job, and we're definitely seeing that in our recruiting process.
So the city of Bismarck, for instance, how many are they
They are right now trying to hire 8 officers, is what I heard.
in Stark County, more local?
More local, they are also going through the recruiting process, and I believe they're trying to hire 2 officers.
Thank you.
Yep.
In reference to the shift work, would adjusting your shifts from, you're on 12-hour now,
That is correct.
would adjusting them to a shorter period of time, think, help with recruit?
It would actually hurt us.
Okay.
Our existing staff, we've talked about that many times, either switching to a 10-hour shift or an 8-hour shift. A lot of resistance from staff. They enjoy when they have the opportunity to have a weekend off. If we go to an 8-hour shift or a 10-hour shift, you actually have very few weekends off throughout the year.
I'm sure you've discussed all the possibilities.
We have.
Any more questions for Chief Dossinger?
I guess, Chief, just to put it on the record, if anyone is interested in applying for the Dickinson Police Department, how do they do so?
If they're interested, if they want to come up, they can stop up at the Public Safety Center. We can visit with them and inform them how to get in touch with the City Hall, or they can contact HR, Shelley Nominate directly, or it's advertised on the Police Department and the city website.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Dossinger. We'll move on to engineering. First item is a change order. Mr. Kubis.
Thank you, President Decker, Commissioners. Yes, the item is for change order number 2 on our West Gravity Phase 3 sewer and water project. This is up by the new middle school. And during construction, our contractor encountered an old oil spill where there wasn't actively leaking oil. It was just oil-contaminated soil. They encountered this when they were excavating the water and sewer trenches. Per state regulations, we contacted the North Dakota Industrial Commission, but since it was an old spill, it wasn't an active spill, the North Dakota Health Department became involved at that point. And we notified the well operator that's in the area and the pipeline owner that we know of in the area, but neither were really responsible for this line. It was an old abandoned line that somehow or another in the past had spilled some oil out of that line. We anticipated being able to excavate this material and haul it to our Dickinson landfill, but through some testings and state regulations, we were required to haul it to an oil field landfill near Belfield. The work was done on a negotiated time and materials basis with the contractor. It was hauled out. We had a planned quantity price for hauling excess material, but obviously our haul was much, much longer. Instead of to the landfill, it was to Belfield. So we reviewed those hourly rates and the landfill fees in Belfield. Those are what they are. And so we did this to the state regulations, and unfortunately, this is a cost that, as we are the property owners here, that we had to incur. So it's been reviewed by our engineer, Apex Engineering, and both they and city staff would recommend approval.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kubis. Are there any questions for Mr. Kubis from the commission on this change order? Hearing no questions from Mr. Kubis, I would entertain a motion to either approve or deny the change order.
Move to approve, Mr. President.
A motion to approve
Second.
and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Steiner.
Aye.
Mr. Altman.
Aye.
Mr. LaFour.
Aye.
Ms. Jennings.
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Thank you. The next item is a report on a trail project that earlier this summer we had accepted a grant through what the DOT calls their Transportation Alternatives Program, or TAP program. When we accepted that grant in the amount of $250,000 to construct the trail along the line you can see in the map is the east-west route is 21st Street and a portion of 10th Avenue East in the northeast part of town. So as this will be a federal aid contract, it is a requirement of all federal aid work that we select an engineer through the RFP, or request for proposal process. And to do that, we're going to put an ad out in the paper to meet our legal requirements. I think with a slant towards our local engineering firms here, We do have criteria that we've used in the past, and a lot of that's based on your experience with this type of a project, availability, your location, and the value that you'll bring to the project. So we hope to get that RFP out in the next couple of weeks, and when we receive those RFPs, we'd sure like to have one or two of our commissioners at the time sit on that selection committee. We usually have an ad hoc committee that we form from city staff to make those selections. I would note that we also have a couple projects coming up, our annual street projects, the mill and overlays, and a street seal project that, while not required by law, since we don't have the federal aid involved, I think we would put those out with the same RFP. It is a time-consuming process for the consultants and for staff to review the proposals, so do one shot and maybe make an engineering selection on all three of those projects. So with that, that was just a report on some upcoming work that we'll have. Are there any questions that the commission has?
Mr. Kubas, could you have for us at the next meeting an updated trails map of all the trails in the city of Dickinson that we've participated in, either by ourselves or with the Parks and Rec, which would include the Patterson Lake trails and so on?
Certainly.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Kubas? The design phase and, I guess I'm looking on here, the surveying and design phase and everything, is this basically a straight line trail? Or is there gonna be some variation to it? I suppose we only have so much right of way.
We do. We only have so much right away. If you can picture in your mind, there's some areas along 21st Street especially where there's some great issues. If you think about the Saks Motors area where it drops, you know, we anticipate this to be on the south side of 21st Street. So the ground kind of falls off as you go south of 21st Street. So there's some areas where you'll be limited. It'll be straight line in the sense that it'll follow a corridor within the right of way, but we can sure put as much meander as we can. I didn't anticipate having to purchase or acquire any right-of-way for the project, so we'll be constrained to that degree.
Oh, I think people will be very happy with just the trail, regardless if it's straight or winding, just so there's continuance there. I guess what I would be looking for is, upon Mr. Kubas's request, if there are one or two commissioners that would want to be on the selection committee.
When would you meet?
We're hoping to make the selection before the first of the year, although I know everything's busy. We have a lot of special meetings already at mid-meeting time, so we don't have a specific deadline that we're bound to, but we'd like to get a consultant on board so they can start moving through the process. Either right before or right after the holidays, I would say.
I would make myself available, Mr. Kubas, so if there's another commissioner that would, if it fits into their schedule. I know everybody's pretty busy.
I'm available after 4 p.m.
Okay. And then we can possibly, with the new commissioner coming on also.
We'll keep you abreast
Right.
of the process as we receive the proposals, so.
Okay. And this is basically a report right here?
Just a report,
Okay.
yeah. We don't need any action today. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Kubas on anything pertaining to the city and engineering before we move on? Hearing none, we'll move on. I see there's no reports from Mr. Zuroff. And we have, moving on to planning, we have a final plat for Killer Mountain Manufacturing. Mr. Kubas.
We do. Thank you, President Decker, Commissioners. In the memo, it actually says it's a preliminary replat. This is a final replat. Very basic, but a little background on the project. This is an addition to the Killer Mountain Manufacturing property. They owned the property, of course, abutting the business loop right of way, and they bought the property south of their building that abuts East Villard. And so this plat combines those two together, fairly simple plat. It's been through planning and zoning. The site is situated at, I guess, 1700 I-94 Business Loop East in Dickinson, for the record. City staff and planning and zoning recommend approval. I would note that There is a development agreement to go along with this project. We've just received that development agreement from the applicant. Anticipate that to be on the agenda very soon. So a contingency of this approval, if it were to be approved, is that we wouldn't record this plat until we had that development agreement in front of you as well. But wanted to keep this moving forward. I think the plat's fairly straightforward. I would note in the development agreement, Kildare Mountain Manufacturing has agreed to, in the form of the development agreement right now, to construct their half of 18th Avenue East, which is the street on the east side of their property right now. So.
Any questions for Mr. Kubis on this plat for Kildare Mountain Manufacturing? Hearing none, the resolution number on this, Ms. Kripe?
Move to approve, Mr. President, with the contingencies stated by Mr. Kubis.
The resolution number?
Mr. President, it would be 37-2016.
37, 2016. Okay. And we have a motion to approve with the contingent on the development agreement.
Second.
And we have a second. Any further discussion on Resolution 37, 2016? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Jennings?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. LaFour?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We have nothing from Buildings and Code. Anything from the commission? Anything that they would like to state to the public? Any concerns? Hearing nothing from the commission, I would open up to the public. If there is anyone in the audience that has any issues concerning the city of Dickinson, please come to the podium, state your name for the record, and express your concerns or opinions. Chief Levi.
President Decker, Commissioners, there's an item that I forgot to mention in my report. My memory is good, it's just really, really short at this stage in my life. So if I may take this as an opportunity to mention that. Our October regular monthly training was what we call a compressed gas fire. It's a live fire prop that we call the Christmas tree. One of our volunteer firefighters has a drone and videoed that training. And it's pretty impressive, we think, and we've posted it to the Dickinson Fire Department Facebook page. So for all of you and all of you in the audience and all of the citizens watching, I'd encourage you to check that out at the Dickinson Fire Department Facebook page, and I hope you like it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Any other public concerns or issues? Seeing none, we'll close the public discussion, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second?
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.